Hey, what's up, guys? This is day 20 of Bible 365, and sorry if the internet's not that great. Place I'm at right now, the internet is not that great, so it may be a little choppy. But let's jump into this anyway. Proverbs chapter 2, starting with verse 12, says, "To deliver you from the way of evil, from the men who speak perverse things, who forsake the paths of uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the perverseness of evil, who are crooked in their ways and wayward in their paths. To deliver you from the strange woman, even from the foreigner who flatters with her words, who forsakes the friend of her youth, and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house leads down to death, her path to the departed spirits. None who go to her return again, neither do they attain to the paths of life. Therefore walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of righteousness, of the righteous. For the upright will dwell in the land, the perfect will remain in it, but the wicked will be cut off from the land. The treacherous will be rooted out of it." Now, this kind of jumps from another passage. So these words are given to keep you from all that. And so the context is that these words will keep you, the wisdom will keep you from all that craziness. Let's jump over to Matthew chapter 14. It says, "At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report concerning Jesus and said to his servants, 'This is John the Baptizer. He is risen from the dead. That is why these powers work in him.' For Herod had arrested John, bound him, and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For John said to him, 'It is not lawful for you to have her.' When he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced among them and pleased Herod. Therefore he promised with an oath to give her whatever she would ask. She, being prompted by her mother, said, 'Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptizer.' The king was grieved, but for the sake of his oath and of those who sat at the table with him, he commanded it to be given. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the young lady, and she brought it to her mother. His disciples came, took the body, and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place apart. When the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. Jesus went out, and he saw a great multitude. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. When evening had come, his disciples came to him, saying, 'This place is deserted, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves food.' But Jesus said to them, 'They don't need to go away. You give them something to eat.' They told him, 'We only have here 5 loaves and 2 fish.' He said, 'Bring them here to me.' He commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed, broke, and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. They all ate and were filled. They took up the 12 baskets full of that which remained left over from the broken pieces. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, in addition to women and children." Wow. Pause for a second right there. Just thinking about how, Jesus said, hey, you are the solution. There's like, you need to send these people away. He's like, no, you know what? You guys are going to feed them. You're going to do the ministry. And I think sometimes, we always sometimes pray, Lord, send these people, send workers. And sometimes God is saying, you know what? I'm actually sending you. I'm actually telling you to be the solution to that problem. Stop acting like I need to send them somewhere else. And of course, sometimes people do need to go somewhere else to get the help that they need. But like right here, Jesus is using his disciples who think that they don't have it within themselves to help these people. And here Jesus is like, oh, wow, yeah, you do have it because you have me. And so I think a lot of times we need to just depend on that. They're like, man, you know what? I'm not the answer. I'm not the solution, but I'm listening to the Holy Spirit. And through that, something good's going to happen. So, yeah. All right, let's go to the next passage. Genesis chapter 40. After these things, the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. He put them in the custody in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. The captain of the guard assigned them Joseph, and he took care of them. They stayed in prison many days. They both dreamed a dream, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. The cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt were bound in the prison. Joseph came in to them in the morning and saw them, and saw that they were sad. He asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, saying, why do you look so sad today? They said to him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. Joseph said to them, don't interpretations belong to God? Please tell it to me. The chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was in front of me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters produced ripe grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Joseph said to him, this is its interpretation. The 3 branches are the 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. You will give Pharaoh's cup into his hands the way you did when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you. Please show kindness to me and make mention of me to Pharaoh and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, 3 baskets of white bread were on my head. In the uppermost basket there were all kinds of baked food for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. Joseph answered, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are the 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off of you, not in a good way. He's going and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from off of you. That's horrible. My goodness. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer didn't remember Joseph, but forgot him. Something powerful about that right there. Sometimes people make promises and you think they are going to, follow through and be like, oh yes, they're going to help me out. But sometimes that don't always happen. Sometimes people forget you but do we become bitter? I think not. I think the story right here of Joseph gives us a good understanding of what we should do, even when people don't come through. And right here, chapter 41, at the end of the 2 full years. I mean, this is 2 full years. My goodness. Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. Behold, 7 cattle came up out of the river. They were sleek and fat, and they fed in the marsh grass. Behold, 7 other cattle came up after them out of the river, ugly and thin, and stood by the other cattle on the brink of the river. The ugly and thin cattle ate up the 7 sleek and fat cattle. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 heads of grain came up, 1 stalk, healthy and good. Behold, 7 heads of grain, thin and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy and full ears. Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. In the morning, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all Egyptians, magicians, and wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. The chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my faults today. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard with the chief baker. We dreamed a dream. In one night, he and I, each man dreamed according to the interpretation of his dream. There was with us the young man, a Hebrew servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. He interpreted to each man according to his dream, and he interpreted to us, so it was. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him, that being the baker. Verse 14, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. He shaved himself, changed his clothing, and came into Pharaoh's presence, basically. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none or no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it isn't me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. This kind of ties into our other passage. It's remembering it's not us who's giving people stuff. It's not us who's giving people bread. Exactly. It is God who is multiplying. That's something to remember. So, verse 17, Pharaoh spoke to Joseph and said, in my dream, behold, I stood on the brink of the river, and behold, 7 fat and sleek cattle came up out of the river. They fed in the marsh grass, and behold, 7 other cattle came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for ugliness. The thin and ugly cattle ate up the first and 7 fat cattle, and when they had eaten them up, it couldn't be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ugly as at the beginning. So I awoke. I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 heads of grain came up, on one stalk, full and good, and behold, 7 heads of grain, withered in, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads of grain. I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. What God is about to do, he has declared to Pharaoh. The 7 good cattle are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ugly cattle that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty heads of grain blasted with the east wind. They will be 7 years of famine. That is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt are coming. 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will not be known in the land by reason of that famine which follows. It will be very grievous. The dream was double to Pharaoh because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look for a discreet and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Wow. Real quick pause there. Man. So God just showed Pharaoh what he's about to do. And in this passage right here, we just see how it is amazing that God is using dreams. He's been using the dream since the beginning of Joseph's life. The dream is pretty much what got him thrown into a place of being in slavery because his brothers were jealous of his dreams. And now God is using the dream to get him into a place of power because he's been in the dungeon. All right, let's jump back into this. Verse 33, now therefore let Pharaoh look for a discreet and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt's produce in the 7 plenteous years. Let them gather all the food of all these good years that come, and store grain under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. The food will be to supply the land against the 7 years of famine, which will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish through famine. The thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, in the eyes of all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Pharaoh said to Joseph, because God has shown you all of this, there is no one so discreet and wise as you. You shall be over my house. All my people will be ruled according to your word. Only in the throne I will be greater than you. Wow. All right. And so that is the reading for today. And it is MLK Day as well. Holiday. And you know, Martin Luther King said so many years ago that he had a dream to see a country that does not judge people by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And, you know, it's amazing just how God uses so many of these things, these dreams, these, in Joseph's life, you know, he used this dream that got him in trouble. This dream got Joseph in trouble, basically, because he said to himself, you know, he had a dream that he saw basically his brothers coming to bow down to him. Now, he wasn't saying this because he was trying to be arrogant or that he was power hungry or something, but he was honestly just telling what happened in the dream. And his brothers took offense at it. His dad even took offense at it. He was like, you think you're going to rule us or something like that? And so it got him in trouble. But it was God's intention. It was God's plan to put him in power so that he could save his family. And I don't know who you are today or what you're going through. You may be going through something to where people have made fun of you, bullied you, done all kinds of wrong things to you, jealous of you, envious of you. But Joseph stayed faithful to God. And in that faithfulness and knowing God, God used him so powerfully to bring life, not only to his family, but to a whole nation. The whole nation of Egypt was saved because of the wisdom that God had planted in Joseph's heart, so that when famine came, he was able to avoid lots of death, because as it is in the rest of the passage, he stored up the grain for the 7 years, and then after that, other 7 years came. He was able to sell that stuff that was stored up. So yeah, God uses circumstances sometimes that we don't like in order to bring families together, in order to bring people together, in order to bring countries together. And what we need to be doing is praying, and continue to pray and never quit, and just ask God to help us see how he's working, and be patient, because even in this story of Joseph, it was 2 years that this guy forgot about him until he came back and was able to be in the king's presence and fulfill that dream that he had. So this is a very momentous day. This day was a day, MLK Day, also Inauguration Day for the new president. And so it's very, I think, very special to think about, like how we deal with the dreams that God has given us, and not to be put off by all the hate and all the anger. So anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. Thanks for joining the 20th day of Reading Bible 365. We are mobile. We're not studio today. And like I said, sorry if the internet was not that great here. But we'll see you next time on Bible 365. Read and renew your mind. Hey friends, a huge thank you to all our incredible sponsors and supporters on Patreon and everywhere else. Your prayers, encouragement, and generosity means the world to us, and we couldn't do this without you. Want to be a part of the journey? Join our studio family today and help us create even more awesome content. Just head over to www.patreon.com/MikeSolo. Let's make something amazing together.